Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for being here at a special meeting. And it's important. I want to thank Brett Johnson for being here from Tidewater, along with the City of Pawtucket, also for being here. At our board meeting last week, the board requested that we get an update from the city and from the development team directly, so that they may be able to ask some questions, given the significant financial gap that's projected in the project. And but I do want to just mention as backdrop to why I think this is really important conversation to really come to some sort of a understanding in terms of moving forward, because Rhode Island is situated right now where it's got economic momentum, something like we've never really seen before in many ways. And I think a lot has to do with the work that's been done by this corporation board and other things that we've done internally to make that happen. And even last week, Moody's recognized Rhode Island as the number 2 in the country in terms of reopening our economy. This doesn't happen by accident, and it happens with a lot of hard work. And this board, again, thank you so much for being here today, because this is important to us to figure out how we maintain the work, how we kind of continue. This week's going to be a lot about state budgets and about how we invest the surpluses that we've been able to enjoy. The highest surplus that we've ever seen in the state of Rhode Island, investing that back into our economy. And this, again, the board here has really been focused on economic opportunity. So what I would say is that we're looking for a solution of some sort, and yet at the same point in time, we have to do right by the people we serve. Right, the taxpayers need to be in the mix. So we need to kind of get a combination here of all the parties that are involved in this project to see whether we could move ahead and come to an agreement that will continue to work to make sure the entire project, the entire Pawtucket project as proposed, actually happens over the next couple of years. With that, we open up the public session, right? Yes, and I think we're prepared to have Brett Johnson and the Fortuitous group to.
I think, Governor, if you don't mind, I'll start. We've got a presentation together, so is that okay? Sure. Good morning. And tell me where. This side, that side? That's perfect. Okay, good. Hey, Governor, Commerce Secretary, and the Board of CommerceRI, thank you for having this meeting and bringing us together. And then we're at a critical point in this Pawtucket and the renaissance of Pawtucket. And as you know, some of you may not know, I was scheduled to be in Cape Verde on a health mission that I canceled when this board set this up, because this is truly the most important economic development project in the city and maybe the state's history. What we did is we put a presentation together. If it's okay with the board, I'll say a couple words. I'm going to turn it to Brett to do an intro, and then we'll put our teams together, and we've done the whole history of everything we've done. But the City of Pawtucket and the State CommerceRI have been together moving forward projects that are so important to Pawtucket and to the state of Rhode Island. Projects that are revitalizing our downtown, attracting new businesses, new residents, and a sense of vibrancy and renaissance to the City of Pawtucket. And not just in other communities. This is here in Pawtucket, which is the gateway to Rhode Island. So I think it's also important that we recognize and stress that. And of course, besides all of those other projects, we're here to talk about the Tidewater project. And I went back and I started thinking about how to best keep it short for everybody's time, keep it succinct, and go over a few things. And I think what I've done is, we talked about 3 years ago, Pawtucket was still reeling from the emotional and economic gut punch of losing the Port Sox development to Worcester. And I say development because it's more than just a stadium, just as this was. This is rather a loss to the city and the state that sadly happened because of a lack of political will, and at the very time we needed leadership. And that's why I'm excited to be here in front of you today. Out of that Port Sox dilemma came this TIF tool, the tax increment financing tool, and that solution was created with support of the General Assembly, put into law and signed by the governor. And it was a tool too late for them back then, but it's a tool that we're here to talk about, as well as other tools that are important to this development project, the Tidewater project. 4 years ago, partnering CommerceRI, an RFP was issued collectively. That is when Brett Johnson and the Fortuitous team submitted a proposal for an ambitious transformational project in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. This transformational project It would not happen if it wasn't for the private and public partnership together that we've been able to culminate over the last 4 years. And that includes our state partners in CommerceRI. Back then, my administration put together an entire team. We went to work. We collaborated close with then Governor Raimondo and the team here at CommerceRI, and we put those tools together and financial contributions to enhance the city of Pawtucket and this development. It's so important. You'll hear so many of the important from the jobs, the economic impact from the teams later on. I think it's important to note that in 2019, when this board approved the TIF and other incentives for this project, no one could have foreseen at that time a global pandemic, global supply chain disruptions, skyrocketing inflation costs, the likes of none of us has seen since the 1980s. Unfortunately, that is the reality and what brings us here in front of you today. If you drive by the Tidewater landing today, you're going to see a space that is already being transformed. What was once an oil tanks and overgrown vacant space has been remediated and graded today. The views of the river are so amazing just with that cleaning of that area. And if you look closely, you'll actually see the imprint of the stadium that we've been working on. So work is happening, and we need to continue that. City of Pawtucket, with its fortuitous partners, is asking the board to use tools available, all tools available, including the TIF, combined with additional private investment fortuitous. And that will allow us to complete the Gateway Tidewater project. In my over 2 decades in public service in Pawtucket, no developer has come to the table with a commitment of this size and a private investment of over $250 million, which will lead into over a full $350 million investment total. Stadium is an anchor tenant with all of the development, the retail, the housing that comes with it. I just want to say thank you for having us here today, hearing us out. I think you're going to be excited to understand all of the data and the numbers and the work that's going into this. So with that, I get the pleasure of turning it over to my friend, who's become a friend and is no stranger to it, Brett Johnson. He, along with fortuitous partners, has committed $250 million to date, and to date, put already $10 million of private money into the state of Rhode Island and into Pawtucket. Brett and his group are here, are the real deal, and I want you to hear from him, and then we'll turn over the presentation. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate everybody being here today.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Rhode Island Commerce Board. Thank you to all the stakeholders, which are truly countless, and most importantly includes every taxpayer in this fine state who've expressed to me personally, to our team on countless times, their enthusiasm, their excitement for this transformative project. I will admit I'm prone to hyperbole, but in this instance with Tidewater, it's not an exaggeration to say that this project will transform the state of Rhode Island. And it's one that I enter with complete humility to play any role making this a reality. I don't view myself as a developer, I view myself as a partner. From day one, our entire team has always entered this relationship as true partners. Anytime anything has come up to hinder the success or viability of this project, we've always said, how can we help? What can we do? And in return, I'm grateful for the time and attention of this incredible group of talent to figure out a viable pathway forward at this crossroads. We are at a pivotal crossroads. At this point, we have totally transformed Pawtucket. If you go and visit this site, and I highly recommend, if any of you haven't had the pleasure of visiting this site recently, try to stop by. It's incredible how this real estate has been transformed in such a short period of time. But it's only just, obviously, the beginning. So, as I highlighted, I don't view ourselves as a developer, I view ourselves truly as a partner. I don't view this about soccer, I view this about creating a place of destination for the state of Rhode Island that encompasses, candidly, almost every sport, certainly every rectangular sport. American football, soccer, lacrosse, rugby, countless concerts. This will be a sports and entertainment hub for not just Rhode Island, for Southern New England. And then finally, this is not a stadium This is a multi-asset transformative development that's led by a state. We will bring critical housing to the state of Rhode Island. We will bring additional critical assets, including aspirationally, we hope to complement the stadium with an indoor event center. A true 365-day-a-year live, work, play destination. I have personally committed a great deal of capital with absolute pleasure. I have an incredible group of investors who've done the same. We look forward to figuring out, with your help and support, how to move this project forward. And I want to thank you, in my opening remarks, I want to thank you for all the time, all the talent. It's not lost on me just how important we all do this. And so with that, I want to thank you all and look forward to some more time together.
I'm going to turn it over to Dylan Zalazzo, who is my Director of Administration, and Jeremy Savage, who will kind of run through the presentation we have. So Dylan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, Board. Governor, thank you for having us here today. It's an honor. We appreciate the time. Not switching now. Anyways, as an introduction, the City of Pawtucket and Fortuitous Partners has submitted an application amendment to our previously approved application for TIF and other financing tools for this project. As a reminder, the project is projected to be over $400 million of investment in downtown Pawtucket when all is said and done. Phase 1 with the amendment is a total of $344 million. Again, we want to thank you for having us here today. I'm going to go through that quickly. Skip to the next slide whenever it's possible. The team we have here today, I'm going to call the Avengers team of TIF financing. We have Laura Radcliffe from Stiefel and Keenan Rice from UniCap. These are two international experts on TIF financing. Carrie Grandy from Lock Lord, who wrote the TIF legislation here in Rhode Island, is a good friend and incredible partner for the City of Pawtucket. Lance Hill from PAR Corporation is our building owner's rep. We have a phenomenal team of people assembled here to make sure that this project is a success for the state of Rhode Island. Finally, Jeremy Savage, who's going to help me with this first part of the presentation. He's our transactional counsel for the City of Pawtucket on this deal. We can skip the next slide, which is simply a placeholder, and go straight to slide 5, please. As a reminder, and the mayor touched on this already, so I'll be brief, but we issued a RFP in collaboration with Commerce Rhode Island after the loss of the Passats. That was a deeply felt loss, I think, for the entire state, and certainly personal for everybody here in this room who worked so hard to try to keep them. However, we saw a request for proposals to redevelop downtown Pawtucket in a way that I think we're seeing here on the board previously. And that RFP strongly recommended that there be a professional sports tenant as the anchor here that would draw additional development down the road. If we go to the next slide, after the RFP was responded to, ultimately Fortuitous Partners was selected as the successful bidder. Not only did they bring that stadium asset that we were looking for, they also brought the development that we were hoping to catalyze down the road with that development right away. They came with an immense commitment to the state of Rhode Island, and as you can see from the quotes from Governor Gino Raimondo behind me, very significant investment by the private developers that was supposed to be supported by roughly $70 to $90 million of public investment. If we go to the next slide, please. Fast forward a year after that, roughly, after lots of work with Secretary Pryor's team, the developer, and the City of Pawtucket, we announced the first phase of this development. As the article quoted by the Providence Journal here, roughly $50 million, a little bit less in incentives announced, and as was pointed out by the article, certainly less than we initially had rolled out. We can go to the next slide, please. I'm sorry to keep making you do that. I can push the button, by the way. Is that all we're doing? Yeah. You don't need to say that. I appreciate it. The structure of Phase 1, the incentives that were approved as part of Phase 1 and announced in February of 2021. TIF financing to the tune of $36.2 million, 27 from state revenues, 9.2 from City of Pawtucket property tax revenues. That will be discussed further later. $14 million in Rebuild Rhode Island sales tax and use credits that net out to $10 million of working capital towards the deal. Finally, just as a point of reference, again, $70 to $90 million initially announced. That total, $41 million from the And just to remind you about what we're talking about, what was that pretty picture that we showed on the screen shows 435 residential housing units in downtown Pawtucket, something we desperately need as a state, not just as a city. 60,000 square feet of commercial space, 57,000 square feet of retail and residential space, a 10,000 seat multi-purpose stadium, 750 750 space parking garage, in addition to the 150 space parking garage that supports the residential development directly. A pedestrian bridge linking downtown Pawtucket and the parking to the rest of the development, with river walks on both sides, public plazas, and numerous other public amenities. This development is so critical to not only the city of Pawtucket, but the state of Rhode Island, to create a destination that I believe people will be proud to come to for years to come. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremy Sandwich, who's going to speak a lot more intelligently than I will to the nuts and bolts here. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Don. So Dylan spoke, the mayor spoke, Brett Johnson spoke. I think everybody in the room can probably tell just how much the city of Pawtucket and the developer believes in this project. I've had the pleasure of representing the city for the last several years, working countless hours with a tremendous team, many of whom are in this room, to bring this project to fruition. The city's always viewed its role in this process as a leader and as a catalyst for this development. To that end, when we sit down in our workspace and have put our heads together for the last several years about how to make this a success, we started with issues like site control. We started with issues like how do we protect the people of Pawtucket, the people of Rhode Island, the taxpayers of Rhode Island. How do we make sure this project gets built so that the pretty picture that we saw on the first page of the presentation is reality in a matter of a few years. So I want to talk a little bit because, and I'm going to use this term loosely, not everyone here has had the pleasure of being involved in those iterative processes. I want to take the next few minutes and talk a little bit about what we've accomplished, what we've done, and also what the city of Pawtucket has given to this project so that we can see it proceed. And it starts with the land. So the city owns 21 acres of prime developable real estate along the river on both the east and west side of the river in Pawtucket. This land has been leased to the developer for a period of up to 100 years for zero rent. And the value of the land, and this is based on tax assessed value of similar real estate in the city of Pawtucket, is approximately $16 million if it were to be sold. We put that in because we needed those commitments that Brett spoke about in order to get this ready for vertical construction. That agreement's been signed. It's already been amended once, which I'll talk about in a little bit, to offer enhanced public protections, but that's been done. That's been done all along. The second thing the city's done is it's executed a tax treaty with the developer to exempt the stadium from real property taxation for a period of 20 years. The value of that 20-year tax exemption is approximately $15 million. And finally, by agreeing to lease the lots to the developer, the city's also agreed to forego tax revenue, real property tax revenue on that real estate at an approximate value of $11 million over the 20-year period. In addition, and these incentives were before this board last February, the city has pledged incremental revenue sufficient, incremental projected tax revenue sufficient to drive $9.2 million in tax increment financing that's proposed. Those bonds are proposed to be issued by the PRA and have already been approved by this board. The above commitments and the commitment I'm about to talk about on maintenance together account for 100% of the projected incremental tax revenues that are received by the city of Pawtucket over the life of those 20-year bonds. On that note, in a little bit when we get to the scope of the development, you'll see that the development includes tens of millions of dollars in planned public amenities and public improvements. The city's agreed to foot the cost of maintaining those. It's also agreed to provide municipal and public services in support of the entire development, which will obviously be significantly enhanced. I spoke a little bit about our iterative process. Over the last 3 years, the city's invested tremendous resources in excess of $6 million in actual costs. Nice one, sorry. I turned it here. How come it didn't turn there? So these are reviewing and approving engineering plans, construction plans, financial due diligence. To give you an idea, the city's finance team has often weekly calls. It's a group of 15 or 16 national financial experts with industry experience to underwrite this deal, and that group has been meeting for 3 years. So this deal has been properly vetted, and the city has footed the cost for that review. In addition, that same team has prepared models that will ultimately support the proposed TIF bond financing. The city's also completed construction on a neighboring lot to the north, which is the town landing lot. Includes a boat ramp and water access, all of which will tie into this development and has been done in support of this development. Finally, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, and I apologize. The city has, with our team, negotiated and drafted transaction documents that secure the path forward for the project. You can skip to the next slide. In those documents, and it's really a suite of 3 documents that were approved and executed in December of last year. The documents are a master development agreement, a tax stabilization agreement, and the land lease that I discussed previously. The master development agreement is the key document that drives this project and locks in the public protections. And it really does that in 3 ways. The first thing it does is it requires a series of submissions which are submitted by the developer to the city and their owner's project manager, PAR Engineering, for review and approval. That review and approval has to be done before bonds are issued. And the things that are submitted for that review include a detailed construction budget and schedule, construction-ready plans, an executed guaranteed maximum price contract with the developer builder, Dimeo Construction, which will lock in construction costs, evidence of a complete capital stack, a payment and performance bond, all the requisite permits and approvals, and a certificate of project readiness. All of that gets reviewed and approved prior to bonds issuing. Then once the bonds are issued, the master development agreement also lays out the process for the requisition of those funds and the inspections that go along with that requisition process, which means that the city's owner's project manager goes to the project site, lays eyes on the work, reviews the invoices in the requisition, and then brings it back to the city and recommends approval. Only then, and only if the city has reviewed those documents and the requisition and made sure they're consistent with the project budget and consistent with the project timeline, only then do the public funds actually transfer to the developer. In the final safeguard, the master development agreement lays out a series of intermediate deadlines. This is a complex project, it's a multi-phase project. The whole timeline is laid out in that agreement. And in that agreement, it's not just, okay, we're gonna start building the stadium on this date. There's intermediate deadlines for all of the prerequisites, all of the pre-planning, all of the construction plans at both their preliminary and final phase. All of that is charted out in that document, and it's already been executed and negotiated. On that note, next slide. On that note, this board last June 14th, unanimously agreed to grant the request to allow the developer to proceed just with the stadium portion of this project. So that approval created what we call phase 1A of the project. That's the stadium and all the supporting infrastructure. Again, that was approved last June. We took that approach, the city team took that approach and mirrored it in the master development agreement and the transaction documents to say phase 1A, stadium supporting infrastructure, phase 1B is the rest of the first phase of this project, including the commercial, the residential, the parking, the retail, all the public amenities. All of that goes in the subsequent phase 1B. Obviously, those are critical improvements. The city team worked with the developer, negotiated hard with the developer for 6 months to design an enforcement mechanism to make sure those subsequent improvements are built. And we use the incremental deadlines I spoke about previously, not just start the construction, but steps along the way. And said if those deadlines are not met, the land lease and the access to the site control for the $16 million in city land, the city has the option to terminate that lease. So that's a critical asset that the city has the ability to take out of the deal if the deal is not proceeding on the path as reviewed and approved by our owners project manager. Next slide, please. So finally, I've talked about much of this, so I'll go through this quickly. There's been actually literally over 10 years of enabling work done in preparation for this project or a project on this site. Starting with a decade plus of master planning effort by the city of Pawtucket and National Grid for the west side of the river. National Grid and the developer have already conducted significant site work on both the stadium and city-owned parcels to prepare for the development, including incredible once-in-a-generation remediation of one of the most contaminated sites in Rhode Island. Narragansett Bay Commission has expended resources. DOT has completed an extensive traffic study to make sure this is feasible. I've spoken about the city financial experts who have done a host of studies, as well as Commerce's own CSL group doing a feasibility study to make sure this project will be a success and can be built. And the city also completed the contracting processes that I've discussed previously. The bottom line is this project is ready for vertical construction. It's ready to proceed. The last obstacle appears to be this financing gap that's been caused by once-in-a-generation, unfortunately, events with COVID-19 and the resulting inflation. So with that, Dan Krober, who leads the project for Fortuitous Partners, is on. And Dan, I'll let you talk about the next slide and a few slides after that. If you don't mind turning to the next slide. Thank you.
Dylan, Jeremy, could I just ask, this is not an attempt to rush you, but I do want to ask, do you have an approximation of the amount of the remaining time?
7 more minutes, sir.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Depending on Dan.
Sorry, Dan is crucial, and we're grateful that he's joining us electronically.
Sorry, just have to change the volume on here. All right, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, can everyone hear me okay? Jeremy, can you hear me?
Hold on one
Could be
second.
clear.
Seven and a half minutes.
We might have volume in the room.
You're just
here,
coming
too.
through the laptop, not the projector. So give me 1 second. Just try and fix that. All right, try again, Dan. All right, one more time. Turn up the volume on the laptop.
Do we have the ability for Dan to call in? Can you call in as if it were just a speakerphone scenario?
Sir, if I call him from that speakerphone, will it work?
Yeah, that would probably work. Maybe the easier.
Do I need to dial 9 and anything to get him? Do I dial 9? Dan Kroger, we're calling you here. Dan, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No. Again, over there. Any chance this microphone will pick him up? No.
I can hear you guys. Can you hear me?
Still just coming through the laptop, not through the conference call thing. Just one moment.
Did you answer your phone?
Yeah.
Hey guys.
He's
Can you
on.
guys hear me okay?
No.
No, you're still just coming through the laptop, not through the phone. All right, try again, Dan. Sorry, unmute yourself on Zoom and try.
All right. Can you hear me better on Zoom?
That's better.
Yeah.
That's better, Dan.
Yep, go ahead, Dan.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, first of all, I apologize for not being here in person. Unfortunately, I tested positive for COVID last week, and happy to keep you all healthy and not be there in person. Otherwise, of course, would have been there. But thank you all for your time. I know this has been an incredible amount of work. I'm the director of development for Fortuitous Partners and positively obsessed with Tidewater Landing for the last 3.5 years. In a couple of these slides here, if we flip over a page, just wanted to touch on, I think it's really important to take a look back at this site over the years and really to thank some of our other partners that aren't doing today, being National Grid, which obviously was just acquired and is now Rhode Island Energy. They've been a phenomenal partner of ours now for a number of years. And they've done a lot of work to clean up the site, so they should most definitely be applauded for this. But if you look at the picture at the top left, and then the kind of succession of images over the years, you can really see the old industrial past that this site had. And the site, the picture up to the left, you can see why the waterfront of Kentucky hasn't been developed in this area for a number of years. Through our work with what's now Rhode Island Energy, we're really excited to kind of flip the page here and to show progress, which we can go to the next image. But to show that top image, which is just a blow up of the previous one, where you see massive manufactured gas plant technology there, oil drums, coal drums, smokestacks, etc. Most of that is all now remediated and capped. What you can see in the lower left-hand corner is the first work that we did on site with Video Construction. We executed a contract back in September where we did what's called vibratory on site, which basically every 8 feet on center on the entire site, we had to pack the site and ready it for buildings. So that work was officially started in September and completed in January. What that allowed Rhode Island Energy to do was finish the capping of the site. And what's very exciting for us now is to look at the image on the right, lower right, where you can actually see the soccer pitch. You can see the shape of it. You can see the shape of the stadium. There's been an incredible amount of work done by us to design, to permit, to construct this project. And you can really start to see it as you drive by the site. You can start to see the impacts that are happening already. And the site will be done in about a month. Will be fully ready for us to show up. The site is ready for foundations to start coming out of the ground. You can actually even see ground sleeves that were installed in the cap for goal posts, for soccer goal posts, for football goal posts, for light poles, etc. So it's really exciting to get out on site and see how much progress has already been made on site. But with that, just wanted to share a little bit of information on progress that's very tangible out on site. And Jeremy, if you want to flip one more. I think we invited our partners from Video Construction who have been with us for well over a year at this point, helping us. But maybe if Brad or Doug could say a few words about, unfortunately, what we're experiencing here is not new to the market, unfortunately, or just a fortuitous and Tidewater thing that Doug or Brad can speak to this on.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning, everyone. My name is Doug Peckham. I'm the Vice President with Dimeo Construction Company. I've been fortunate enough to be 34 years of our long and proud history of 92 years. We service all of New England, specifically in Rhode Island, of all different types of commercial projects. Specifically the sports complex, we've completed in our history over 40 plus sports-related complexes, and specific to Rhode Island, originally the Providence Civic Center, when I was about that big, 50 years ago, up to the more recent Ed Cooley practice facility at Providence College. So we're well adept to pricing and constructing sports complexes all across New England. We were brought on in June of last year. I'd like to recognize Fortuitous and the City of Pawtucket has been a great partnership working through the process. And at that time, we provided an estimate for the project. Through the evolution of the design and then continuing on through November and December of last year, we went to the market in a competitive bid situation. It was referenced earlier at GMP. And early indications of the GMP was the pricing was up, approximately 34+% from where we were on the June budget. As you're all aware, to your personal expenses for groceries, gas, and the like, entertainment, we've all been impacted through the pandemic of COVID and post-pandemic activities. The construction industry hasn't been exempt to that. We have, across all of our projects over the last 12 to 18 months, developers have struggled to get their arms around, and we as well. And some of the cost escalators that impacted this project in specific were the structural steel commodity for the structure, miscellaneous metals, reinforcing steel within the concrete, as well as aluminum, glass, metal panels. Those were some of the larger differentials to the budget versus where the competitive market was. We worked with Fortuitous, the design team, the trade contractors, to identify a number of concept ideas to what we call value engineer and trim back the project to generate some savings. Through that effort of identified several $1 million, we then rebid the project with further design documents incorporating those value concepts. And in March of 22, basically the value engineering concepts were netted out by the same escalating costs of another 12%. So we went lateral to where we were in December. We continue to work the problem. We're committed to this project to continue to work with Fortuitous and the design team. Going forward, and as a Rhode Island company, we're excited for this project, the transformation, and it's a historic project that we're committed to making a project work.
Quickly, just to deal with the large inflationary effects, here's some of the work to date. The developer has put in another $25 million of equity commitment to account for a significant piece of that gap. The value engineering effort that the team, in conjunction with Commerce Rhode Island's experts in the City of Pawtucket, identified over $15 million of value engineering savings off of the cost of the project, and that put us at a gap of $35 million. The city and Commerce have also agreed to shift the timing of the planned Riverwalk, which is roughly $5 million of additional savings We've applied for a grant to fund that, and if we're unsuccessful there, we will find other methods with which to fund that important public amenity. That leaves us where we're at today with the $30 million gap and the application amendment that has been submitted to Commerce, Rhode Island. Mayor, do you want to speak to the importance again?
No, I think that out of abundance of time, I think everybody knows.
So just quickly, I'd like to introduce Laura Radcliffe from Stiefel and Keenan Rice from UniCap to talk a little bit about the TIF tool that we propose to fill the gap with, and then that will conclude our presentation. I'm sorry if I'm too loud into this microphone.
Good morning. Could we go back to the previous slide for a second? I did want to make a few comments there. One of the things we always tell our government clients is that tax increment financing is an implementation tool. It's there to accomplish something the government has decided it wants to accomplish. And that's the case here. It's not just about Tidewater Landing, as important as it is. Tidewater Landing is the anchor for Pawtucket's downtown redevelopment efforts. In the last 30 years that we've worked with government agencies on redevelopment, one of the things we've learned is the importance of an anchor. The best anchor is creating great public space, spaces that draw the public. There can be different types of great public space. You can have a sports venue, you can have an entertainment venue, you can open up the waterfront. There's other types of great public space. This project includes all three of those types of great public space. Creating this great public space, drawing the public into downtown Pawtucket, is really essential to accomplishing the goal of creating a downtown that's vibrant and inclusive and sustainable in Pawtucket.
You know, one of the things I thought was worth mentioning is your TIF statute in other states, in Virginia, for example, is called a Development of Regional Impact statute. This form of financing is used for these catalytic projects. And it's used because the downtown redevelopment can't happen but for this funding. This plan of finance for the Tidewater project provides that funding, and it's paid for with new and previously authorized taxes. It's practical, it works, and it will provide the required public funding. So, next slide, please. So who am I? I'm Laura Radcliffe with Stiefel. Stiefel is the nation's #1 underwriter of bonds. Nobody knows how to say our name, but we are in fact the leading underwriter. We are the City of Pawtucket's underwriter for economic development bonds, and in particular, we have a focus on tax increment financing. We've been #1 in that space for a very long time.
As long as I've known you. So UniCap is a registered municipal advisor with the SEC and the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board. We're a specialist. We work only with local governments when they're working with real estate developers and real estate development efforts. That's all we've done for the last 25 years. I'm the president and founder of the company. Our work is a continuation of the work I've done throughout my career. In the last 25 years, since UniCap was funded, we've assisted government agencies in putting together funding for almost 500 real estate development projects that have invested almost $10 billion of public funds in important and significant redevelopment projects.
Now, our two firms have worked together extensively with the entire city team and with the commerce team for a variety of evaluating a number of options for a variety of years. We've looked at various revenue sources. We've looked at the feasibility of those revenue streams with respect to the bond market, and we've provided multiple analyses to Commerce for their evaluation, probably more than they ever wanted to receive. So both of our firms in working here have put to use tools and experience that we've brought from other places in the market. We have extensive experience. In the past year, for example, Stiefel closed on 70 TIF bond issuances, totaling more than $1 billion, in addition to privately placing bond issues using the same revenue sources. So we have a fund of knowledge back at our firm. There are more than 200 of us who do this and similar kinds of work, and we've brought that to Pawtucket and to Rhode Island.
The point of this slide is we know the financial markets for TIF and TIF-like bond issues. Last year, UniCap closed on 78 bond issues, TIF or similar type project-based financing that funded over $1.4 billion. So far this year, we've closed on over 20 bond issues, TIF-type bond issues. So we're very familiar with the market and what works in the market. we want to summarize, but just saying that this structure will provide, and that's really the point we were making when we said we know the financial markets, we're in the financial markets really on a weekly basis. This structure that you're being proposed to approve will work. It'll provide the public investment necessary for this project to go forward. It's paid for with new taxes, primarily with new taxes created by the development. Those taxes won't happen if this development doesn't occur. And given our experience at being in the market on a regular basis, we're very confident, and that's important. This is a structure that works. It will accomplish the goals of bringing Tidewater Landing, making it a reality, and providing those great public spaces and creating this anchor for downtown Pawtucket.
And one of the things we've learned in bringing so many of this type of issue to market is that the state's support of this issue speaks volumes, and that really helps market the bonds.
Thank you.
So just to wrap it up, I think you heard from all the professionals, right? From me to hit home, I think it's so important. For decades, the riverfront downtown Pawtucket has been blighted, contaminated, and inaccessible to the people and the residents of both the Blacksburg Valley and the state of Rhode Island. We've been dealing with a vacant McCoy from when this all started as well. We're dealing with this, and we know that this is the right thing for our community office, for our state, as we've proven to you, or will prove to you as we're going through this. We've worked with our partners to remediate and redevelop the riverfront and our downtown. And the bottom line really is this Tidewater project is about realizing those goals. I think you understand, we understand as you do, there are perceptions, but we've brought in a team of valuable people. We've worked hard with CommerceRI and the governmental structure to show that this is a reality, not the perception. So with that, I think it's important to say thank you. The team and I will be here, and all the professionals in the room. I think there's going to be an executive piece on that, so I want to move this along. I want to thank the governor and the Commerce Secretary and each of you for allowing us this time, and apologize for a little bit of the audio break, but thank you.
So we can take a motion to go to executive.
Can we ask questions now, or
Your pleasure, Lloyd.
yeah, I have a few if you don't mind.
Yes.
So the GMP, we are filling the gap for 1A, or does it include 1B as well? Is 1A just stadium only for the 30 million, or is it 1B also?
Good, Don, you want to grab it a little bit, or?
Yeah, the application we initially submitted is for one as a whole, and the application amendment is also for one as a whole. So there's been a lot of moving parts in that, right, including the additional equity commitment, the value engineering, things of that nature. So a lot of that goes to offset the cost of the stadium, but I think in general it's the entirety of phase one.
Okay, so you have a GMP for 1A and 1B.
No, I might not just jump in on behalf of our fortuitous, Mike Sweeney, I've been representing fortuitous. We haven't gone out for bids. We're at designs for 1B, 1A across the river.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't have the GMP bids out yet. This gap is for what we have today.
Which is stadium 1A.
Stadium.
Yeah, okay. The other thing, the list of city contributions, what is new? What added city contributions are there?
So I think over, as we talk about new, we've talked about this, we've done a lot of the value engineering. We've put a lot of dollars on the table. We probably have currently, and as we've listed, we have over $60-some million already invested in that. So we have been talking about what other things we can do besides the land. But anything in this, we've already taken out all the contributions the city put in. That's how we got to the 35 million-ish. And we took $5 million out for the bridge, which will be on us later on.
I see. And then basically my last question is the incremental, the new, is one of the Stifel people, or one of those folks said that this is incremental tax revenue, new tax revenue generated by the stadium itself. Do we know what that number is? Because it was my understanding that there's a significant amount of base income that's going to be required, not just incremental.
Yeah, I think we've got some models not with us here today, but certainly that we can share.
Any other questions before we go to executive session?
Will they be available after we go to executive session if we have additional questions?
You can bring them in and then we can come out.
Okay, thank you.
Make sure we follow all the rules, but that's the thing. Right, so I take a motion to go into executive session?
So
Okay, Okay, second? Further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we will be in executive session, so we can clear the room and we'll, proceed.
Could I ask you a question outside?
Sure, and I love the song your phone plays.
Yeah, nice, huh? That was unintended. Now, you're with, I'm sorry, I forget which firm. You're with Stiefel. Not Stifle, but Stiefel. You get that all the time.
Thank you.
As the underwriters, your firm is compensated at the placements of the bonds, correct?
Yes.
At the same time, for various tranches, you put them out to other organizations. Do you have an ongoing connection to the bonds after they've been issued?
As required by Securities and Exchange and other rules, there's, for example, there's continuing disclosure requirements we may assist with. There may be secondary trades of the bonds that our brokers may or may not be involved with. But on an official underwriting basis, we're done at the end of the successful
Right. So do
underwriting.
you consider in a successful placement, you won't hold the bonds yourself?
Correct.
Right? Okay.
They are sold to the
So you're compensated then, and then as a result, do you have any financial connection whatsoever to the success of Tidewater?
No.
So is it fair to say then that you're bullish on all bond issues? Because, fairly, capitalistic society, that's how you're paid. Did you ever get up in front of an organization like this and say, well, the odds of success may or may not, I understand that you're going to have disclosures in the underwriting, but
Down here.
you guys make your bones regardless of whether or not you promote the bonds. I know this is an uncomfortable question for you, sir, but no, I don't have a misunderstanding of the bond market at all. I have, yeah,
We'll get this.
I know you will. You guys always do. I think you've answered the question. You make the money, then you leave town, and with Pawtucket being stuck with it, when it doesn't work, basically with these bonds, if the Pawtucket Redevelopment Authority defaults on these bonds, who is responsible for the payments?
I will say that bonds must be structured correctly. We've been working on this for 3 years.
I understand that. That's
if
fine.
the bonds are not structured correctly, things like that can happen. And so it is not the case that one would stand in front of a public body and say that you can move forward with any.
But again, if the stadium fails and the bond payments aren't met, you guys win. You've made your money. You leave town. Everything's good, right? I know. These are questions you don't like to talk about.
I did answer you.
I know. I appreciate that. And she's whisked away by the Providence politicians. Oops. Gotta hate when that happens. Sorry.